right, we good. Sorry. All right, cool. Wait. People. Hello. Yeah, so again, texturing your hero object. And for the textures, they should be, by the end of the week, complete. So any maps that you're going to add on, like bump map, roughness map, etc., should all be on there, ideally by the end of this week. In terms of the texture expectations, I'm expecting something more complex than just basic slider values, as per pretty much all the other texturing assignments.
Just a quick question. Can you reuse the same turntable as last SDO1?
Go for it. I have no preference.
That's work.
Yeah. No, I'm always in favor of doing turntables. I'm going to go over how to set up a turntable again for those of you that don't have one pre-made. But yeah, if you have one from last quarter that is usable for this, you're more than welcome to reuse that, because I'm all for saving time. But yeah, so for the textures, again, more complex than slider values. You're probably, I don't mind if you use internet textures as a base for things. What was your name again? Nasir, cool, thank you. But yeah, so I don't mind you using internet textures for a base for stuff. Just realize that you're probably going to have to edit them so that they make sense with your UVs of your object for the final. And since this is the final, again, I do want to see the textures like not have really obvious UV seams, that kind of stuff in them. And I don't particularly, I'm not going to like, I don't know, you guys don't need to cite stuff if you get it from textures.com. If this was like a real project or whatever, you should, but for this, I don't really care. And then, so again, like, internet textures as base is fine. You'll probably have to edit them in something like Photoshop, Mudbox, whatever. You're also welcome to just custom make stuff directly in Photoshop, or use procedural textures, kind of whichever you prefer. Doesn't really matter to me. And I'm not doing any kind of like minimum. You need to have for each texture like 3 different maps mapped in or whatever. So there's no minimum expectation for that. My only expectation is you're going to do enough to make your object look nice. So if you need more textures or like more maps in there, add more maps in there. Presumably you would have something past just a color map for something. But yeah, so any questions on the texturing bit of that assignment? All right. The other thing that, I'm sorry. So for the texturing, I also would like you to throw your object into your scene with the most updated day and light nighting and most updated textures, models, etc. And render your object in the scene with at least 1 daylight render and 1 night render, so you can see how the textures interact with your actual lighting. Does this make sense? Cool. And again, other thing, so next week you'll be required to render a full turntable of your hero object. This week I just want you to set it up and render every 25th frame to make sure that you don't end up on a certain angle with like your shadows looking really weird and like not being able to see the object. So basically just proofing it before you waste a bunch of time rendering 300 frames and then realize you have to change everything. In terms of, and again, I'll go over how to set up the turntable after crit, I guess. I do have some specific expectations for this. So in terms of lighting, the object should be reasonably visible. Hopefully that's obvious, but like don't have stuff that's so shadowed it's completely black and you can't see it, or so overexposed that it's totally white and you can't see it. I would also appreciate if you could put your object on some kind of little platform so it's not just sort of randomly spinning on a plane. Imagine, if you're going to like a car show or something like that, they like throw the cars on a giant rotating platform. Make that giant rotating platform. For this one, I also want to see walls into floor. So I don't mind if you guys want to use HDRIs for your lighting, that's totally fine. But what I very much don't want to see for the turntables is an object sitting on a plane that's just like floating on an HDRI. If you're gonna spend the time to render 300 frames, you might as well take like 10 seconds to add in some walls so it looks a little bit more professional. But again, I don't mind that if you just use HDRIs for your lighting, that's totally fine. And then these last two, I'll go over specifically how to set this up when we do the turntables, but I would like your object moving at a constant speed and having seamless animation, or seamless looping. Maya has a tendency when you set keyframes by default to go really slow, like speed up and then slow down by the second keyframe. It looks really weird. And again, I'll show you how to fix that. And then also set up a logical pivot point for your object so that it's not flailing wildly through space as it's rotating. I'll go over that again, but it does look really weird when that happens. And I made at some point a tutorial about just like how to set up a turntable that might be potentially more targeted or direct than whatever I end up saying in class. So I linked that there in case you want to reference that. But it goes through setting up the basic turntable, all the render settings, all that stuff, which I'll still go over today, and I'll put that on YouTube as well, but I put it here because I have it. So any questions on the turntable expectations? Cool. And then in terms of what to submit, throw me your file project folder, or your Maya project folder, sorry, with 3 renders of your object, any textures you used, the most up-to-date Maya file, and also any reference images that you used for your object. And also the partial turntable renders for like every 25th frame. You can just throw those in your images folder. If you want to put them in a separate folder, that's fine, doesn't really matter. But they should be in your images folder. And then just, if you wouldn't mind, just like going from here on out, I'll make sure that this is like written in the description, but if you could just like throw a note in the submission text if you're doing high or low poly models, just helps me keep things straight. I don't want to like accidentally like think you're doing something high poly, but realize it's actually low poly, but like grade it as a high poly object, if that makes sense. Because I do have a lot of variation, so I just want to make sure that I'm, grading you on what you're actually doing and not what I think you're doing, but you're not doing. So any questions on the assignment? Oh, huzzah. All right, that was dignified.